Hey guys, Miss Algar here. Today you are watching a video on dramatic devices. This is part one of a series of videos on these particular literary devices. Today we'll be talking a little bit about asides and monologues, two dramatic devices that we have already been introduced to just in the first act of Romeo and Juliet. Let's start things off with the aside. So an aside happens when a character is speaking to the audience, and the most important thing about this is that they are typically unheard by other characters on stage. And typically they're addressing the audience, and when these asides happen, they may be speaking something that they're thinking of, giving voice to their thoughts. And typically these asides are short comments, nothing too long, nothing that would warrant a speech or anything. So just a short phrase or comment. Right here we've got an example of an aside that Romeo speaks, and in it Juliet is saying, "Or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, I'll no longer be a Capulet." And Romeo turns to the audience. He's not addressing Juliet at this point. He says, "Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?" Almost as if he's asking the audience, when really, if we isolate the situation, Romeo is asking himself this, if he should respond to what Juliet is saying. And then you see in this following, right, in this following little box here, Juliet says, "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy, thou art thyself, though not a Montague." It's almost as if she's continuing what she said here right into here. And there's no indication that she heard whatever it is Romeo was saying here. So there's that indication that this note, that this is an aside, tells you that this line that Romeo is speaking is not heard by Juliet and is in fact meant only for the audience's ears. Moving right along to the monologue. Now, a monologue is typically when a single character, thus the mono in monologue, a single character addresses other characters, and typically they're expressing the thoughts of the character out loud. And you'll typically find these in the form of a speech. So the single character, they may be addressing the audience, although that's something a little different, something that we would call, actually, not may, a soliloquy, but this is not the same. Not the same. Monologues and soliloquies are quite different from each other, so take note of that. The example I have for you here is a pretty lengthy monologue, and you can see it's spoken by Prince Aeschylus, and this is actually from Act 1, Scene 1 of Romeo and Juliet. And in this you can see that he is addressing numerous characters, right? He's saying rebellious subject. He's talking to Capulet and Montague, right? And he's issuing a decree at this point, right? By saying that if ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of peace. So right here, Prince Aeschylus is threatening the heads of the Montagues and the Capulets by saying that they will pay with their lives if their feud ever causes a fight in the streets of Verona. So you see here, it's a speech, definitely a speech, long enough to be considered one. And he's addressing it to other characters, like we see right here. So, it's a fairly short video, so let's quickly recap what we learned today. So we learned a little bit about asides, and we learned a little bit about the monologue. We know that these are both spoken by single characters. Oh, didn't cross my T. Single characters, right? For both. I'm going to shorten that to CHAR. But an aside is directed at the audience. And it is not heard by the other characters. Whereas a monologue is typically directed at other characters. Now, the aside is much shorter in length. This is typically just a comment, whereas a monologue is typically the length of a speech. Okay, so there we have it, your recap on asides and monologues. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in a comment or on the bulletin board. We don't have a bulletin box. Or you can bring them to class the next time we meet. Thanks for watching.